As you heard in the story for all ages, Ramadan is a holiday and it begins today. Ramadan is the Muslim holy month, and an estimated 1.9 billion Muslims across the globe will observe it in some form. And this means that someone here among us, or someone we know, a friend, a coworker, a neighbor, a child's teacher, will be celebrating and fasting during this holy lunar month. Ramadan marks the time in the lunar calendar year that Muslims believe God revealed the first verses of the Quran to Muhammad. During the month of Ramadan, Muslims fast every day from dawn to dusk, and it is a time of spiritual discipline, deep contemplation, extra prayer, fasting, increased charity and generosity, and study of the holy book, the Quran. Fasting is one of the 5 pillars of the duties of Islam. All Muslims are required to participate, although there are special dispensations made for those who are ill or elderly, pregnant or nursing, or too young. The practice of fasting is meant to remind you of your human frailty and your dependence on a higher power for sustenance, to demonstrate what it feels like to be hungry and thirsty, so you can also grow in compassion with the poor and needy. And it is also meant to reduce the distractions in your life so that you can focus more clearly on your relationship with God. If you break your fast in any way, it invalidates your fast for the day, and you can start again the next day. To make up for your fast days that you've missed, you can either fast later in the year, or you can provide a meal to the needy for each day that you missed. Muslims are also meant to curb negative thoughts and feelings like jealousy and anger, even things like swearing, complaining, and gossiping. Some may choose to abstain from watching television or listening to music in favor of listening to recitations of the Quran instead. Jennifer Williams, a reporter for Vox, explains that despite the hardship of fasting for a whole month, most Muslims, herself included, actually look forward to Ramadan and are a little sad when it's over. There's just something really special about knowing that tens of millions of your fellow Muslims around the world are experiencing the same hunger pangs, dry mouth, dizzy spells that you are, and that we're all in it together. It's kind of like the Muslim version of Christmas, she says, in a sense that it's a religious holiday where everyone comes together for big meals with family and friends and exchanges presents and generally has a lovely time. They break their fast each evening. The Christian practice of Lent began on February 14th of this year and ends on March 28th. Lent is practiced by most Christian groups, including Roman Catholics, Episcopalians, Presbyterians, Methodists, Anglicans, and Lutherans. Even some Unitarian Universalists have adopted a Lenten practice, which involves reflecting on a word each day, rather than fasting or abstaining from something for a period of time. The focus of the Lenten season is similar to Ramadan. It is on spiritual growth and connection with God. Oftentimes, Christians choose to take on something during Lent, like reading more of the Bible or completing daily devotions. Fasting is a traditional part of Lent, but not everyone does it. Its purpose is to symbolize penance or remorse for one's sins, and this can also be done by giving up a luxury or completing acts of charity. In addition to standard fasting routines, Catholics traditionally give up meat every Friday during Lent, except for fish. Jews have a ritual fasting on Yom Kippur. It's considered the holiest day of the year, a day of atonement. There are fasting rituals in Buddhism, Hinduism, and indigenous earth-centered traditions. Most of the world religions have a practice that turns you toward transformation, returning to self and visiting with the divine, focusing on something worth lifting up. So in examining these practices and rituals, I ran across Buddhist teacher Pema Chodron, who writes, "Let difficulty transform you, and it will. In my experience, we just need help learning how not to run away." This idea makes me wonder, does it take difficulty to transform us? Must it never be easy? And I'm afraid so, speaking from my own experience. My most transformative experiences in my life have not come from things being particularly easy. The road to transformation has been rocky and confusing, angering and frustrating at times, but eventually I had no choice but to surrender to the process and breathe into the possible lessons and gifts. I was glad to hear that journalist say that she looks forward to Ramadan and misses it when it's over, perhaps showing us that through difficulty, we can find joy and meaning. A friend of mine shared that Ramadan feels right on time for her this year. The prescribed timeline of a holiday provides an opportunity to anticipate and become ready, which leads me to some questions I have. What causes people or leads people to want to transform? Does one necessarily need to want it in order to transform? What makes people ready to face difficult challenges? And how do we keep from running away from the difficulty? First, what makes people want to transform? I think community helps a lot. Doing things together and knowing you're not alone. But even individual fasting or practicing something for a period of time can be transformative outside of so-called community. I know pastors who fast for periods of time to help themselves focus on what might be the next right move when making big decisions. But you have to want that kind of transformation, to voluntarily go into a fast for the purposes of spiritual deepening and growth. But do we always have to want it, to desire that transformation for it to happen? Can transformation just happen to us? I think it's a delicate balance. The feeling of transformation does involve a release, a letting go, a surrender, a yielding to the nature of things. But it's never really done against our will. We have to be open to it enough to let it in, to let it happen. Consider the difference in results for a person who chooses to go into rehabilitation for drug and alcohol addiction versus someone who is forced to go by a court order. It's significantly more likely that the person who chose to go will stick to their goals of recovery than the one who's not yet ready to recover. So what makes people ready? I'm reminded of Anais Nin's poetic writing, "And the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom." The flower doesn't decide to blossom. There just comes a time when it is totally and completely ready to blossom. Like the flower, we feel the tension of the already and the not yet. who we are and the potential of who we can become. We are beings that are meant to change and grow and transform, but we have to be ready. Otherwise, the change will not stick. The transformative practice will not result in transformation. Now, how do we keep from running away from difficulty? They sang this morning, "Take me to the river, wade in the water." I think water is an incredible metaphor for change and transformation, as well as that concept of surrender. I wrote a poem in 2019, in the summer, about exactly that. It's entitled Salinity. I expected surrender would feel like floating, not realizing that I had forgotten what it felt like to float for the first time. I expected that this surrender would involve holy water, dense with sacred salt that renders me weightless. I expected surrender to heal me, and then I remembered the realities of salt in my wounds and water's ability to find them, both the old wounds yet unhealed and the tiny cuts earned along the way to surrender. This sacred salt will hold me and heal me. It will sting and burn, but it will also soothe and expedite my healing in ways I have never before experienced. I am here now in a state of complete and total surrender until I am reminded again of my inevitable resistance. In the poem, surrender is not a destination, but a process that happens over and over again. The salt in the water makes the water healing, but it also creates a difficulty. It takes determination and patience, trust and faith to keep from running away from the pain of the healing salt. Part of surrendering or releasing control means that we leave room for mystery and possibility of something greater than ourselves. Swiss poet and philosopher Henri Frédéric Ariel writes encouraging us to let mystery have its place in you. Do not always be turning up your whole soil with the plowshare of self-examination, but leave a little fallow corner in your heart ready for any seed the winds may bring, and reserve a nook of shadow for the passing bird. Keep a place in your heart for the unexpected guests, an altar for an unknown God. We're mixing cultures a little bit here, but building wisdom as we go. It's not necessarily about tilling up all the soil and examining every bit of it for improvement. And I don't think that's really what transformation is about anyway. There's a mystery to it, an element of being ready for whatever comes, being open to the unexpected. We have to want it, transformation, but we have to be ready for it to take another form than we expected. We have to be open to what we might encounter along the way. And we have to be gentle with ourselves and each other on our journeys, because we don't know what will turn our lives upside down before it transforms us. We have to recognize that transformation is healing time, a time for our bodies and spirits to heal and repair old wounds. I'd like to close with a poem by Pesha Gertler entitled Healing Time. Finally, on my way to yes, I bump into all the places where I said no to my life, all the untended wounds, the red and purple scars, those hieroglyphs of pain carved into my skin, my bones, those coded messages that send me down the wrong street again and again. Where I find them, the old wounds, the old misdirections, and I lift them one by one close to my heart, and I say, holy, holy. Friends, on the road to transformation, we will encounter parts of ourselves that need tending, holding, and healing. Reflection allows us to enter into a deeper relationship with ourselves and our purpose. If we can look gently upon our lives and our past while engaging in spiritual practice, I believe we can transform gracefully into what we want to be. Blessed be, may it be so, and amen.